Welcome to our spine-chilling midnight storytelling event. Prepare yourselves for an evening filled with eerie tales and ghostly encounters. Tonight we delve into stories of the unknown, where shadows come to life and every creak of the floorboards whispers secrets of the past. Gather around as we transport you to a world where the supernatural reigns and every corner holds a lurking mystery. Remember, these stories are not for the faint-hearted. So, sit back, clutch your blankets, and brace yourselves for a night of unforgettable horror. If you like, please subscribe to our channel for more stories in the future. Thank you. Let's begin. We will tell you about a terrifying story that happened on Halloween. This story is said to be true, and it makes my hair stand on end just thinking about it. It all took place many years ago in my hometown, which was then just a small town nestled in the Catalonian mountains of Spain. The town was merely a small square with a church, park, jail, and school, with all the houses clustered around. The town was very proud of its school because it had been voted the best school in the province. On the morning of October 31st, Halloween, a classroom full of students was making crafts. Some were cutting skeleton shapes out of paper, some were drawing bats and vampires, and others were carving pumpkins. The students were all about 9 years old. Their teacher was a beautiful young woman who had only been working at the school for about a month. As the children played and prepared Halloween decorations, the teacher turned on the radio to check the weather forecast. She planned to organize an outdoor Halloween party for the children later that day and wanted to make sure it wouldn't rain. Suddenly, the weather forecast was interrupted by another announcement. This is an important announcement. An escaped convict has broken out of the local jail. He may be armed and very dangerous. Please do not approach him. The police are on their way. The teacher hurried across the room to turn off the radio. She didn't want to panic the children, but it was likely too late. The kids had already heard the broadcast and were frightened by the news. They knew the jail was very close to their school. The teacher tried to calm them down and told them not to worry. A few minutes later, the school principal made an announcement over the intercom. Attention all teachers. We have been informed that the police are handling a very serious situation in town. All teachers are advised to lock their classroom doors and windows until the police have the situation under control. I repeat, please lock all doors and windows until further notice. The teacher tried to reassure the class. She took out her keys and locked the classroom door. Then, she went around the room, closing all the windows to make sure they were secure and no one could get in. A little girl raised her hand and asked if she could go to the bathroom. The teacher allowed her to leave the room, locking the door behind her. To distract the kids from the frightening situation, the teacher began to tell stories. "20 minutes passed, and the little girl had not returned. The teacher began to worry. Why is she taking so long? She wondered aloud. Suddenly, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Everyone in the class fell silent. Then, they heard a sound at the door. It's the little girl. The teacher sighed in relief. she stepped forward to unlock the door. What if it isn't her? A boy, trembling with fear, asked. The teacher hesitated, the key inches from the lock. They heard the noise again. It has to be her, the teacher said firmly, deciding to put the key in the lock and turn it. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a tall man stood there. In his right hand, he held a knife, and in his left hand, he held the severed head of the little girl. The escaped convict had entered the classroom, grinning from ear to ear. The children were now trapped inside. All that could be heard in the school hallway were the horrifying screams and cries of pain. In the chaos, the teacher managed to break a window and escape, barely keeping her sanity. Unfortunately, some of the children were not so lucky. When the police arrived, they found the killer asleep in the middle of the classroom. The floor, walls, and ceiling were covered in blood, with small body parts scattered around. They found the headless body of the little girl in the third stall of the bathroom. The police pieced together what might have happened on that cold October day. The escaped convict had likely hidden in the bathroom when the unfortunate girl entered. He must have held her captive and forced her to reveal the password to unlock the door. After getting the information he needed, he murdered her. The teacher is now in a mental hospital. She never recovered from the incident. The school was abandoned afterward because no one wanted to send their children there anymore. Too many bad memories lingered. The school remains as it was on the day of the murders. They say if you visit the old school and enter that classroom, you can still see blood drops dripping from the statues. If you are brave enough, you can go into the bathroom. Just knock 3 times and scratch twice on the door of the third stall, then open it. You will see the headless body of the poor little girl sitting on the toilet. One evening, a young girl returned home from school to find her house empty. Her mother had left a note on the fridge for her. It said that her father was working the night shift, her mother was out shopping, and her brothers were at a football practice. She was alone in the house. She locked the front door for safety, then placed her mobile phone on the living room table, hung her keys on the hook, and went upstairs to her bedroom to change clothes. While undressing, she noticed a note on her bed. She picked it up and read it. "Someone is in the house." She assumed her brothers were playing a prank on her, so she crumpled up the note and threw it away. "Very funny, guys," she said aloud. "What happened? Did you skip football practice?" But there was no answer. "I know you're here," she yelled. "If I catch you going through my stuff, you're dead." The girl went to the kitchen to prepare a snack. When she opened the fridge, she found another note. It read, "No one is here but you and me." She put the note down and said, "All right, guys, this joke is over. Stop it." Still, there was no reply. She went to the front door and tried to turn the handle, but it was locked. She turned back to get her keys, but the hook was empty. Then she looked at the living room table and saw her mobile phone was missing. On the table was another note you can't escape. She screamed and picked up the landline to call the police. There was no dial tone. She followed the phone cord and realized it had been cut. Another note lay near the phone. No phone, no police, no way out. Trembling with fear, she ran to the back door. When she tried the handle, it was also locked. Nearby, she found another note on the back door. Give up. Looking up, she saw her pet cat, stabbed and pinned to the kitchen wall. Screaming in horror, she ran to the nearest window. She tried to punch and kick it, but the glass wouldn't break, it didn't even crack. Another note was stuck to the window. You won't give up, will you? Terrified, she tried to think of what to do. She needed a knife for self-defense. Running to the kitchen, she opened the drawer, but it was empty. All the knives were gone, replaced by another note. Children shouldn't play with sharp things. She ran upstairs to her bedroom, locking the door behind her. She checked the closet, and under the bed no one was there. The TV turned on by itself, loud and static-filled. On the screen was another note. You're right where I want you. Panicking, she screamed for help. Then she remembered her laptop. She found it and quickly sent an email to her best friend. Help, this is not a joke. Call the police. There's a stranger in my house. Minutes later, she heard sirens outside. The police arrived and broke down the front door. They rushed to her bedroom and found her curled up in the corner, shaking with fear. The officers searched the entire house from top to bottom but found no one. When they asked the girl what had happened, one of the officers noticed a note stuck to her back. He pulled it off and handed it to her. It read, "You were so close." Isabella and Chloe were typical American teenagers. After school, they spent all their time watching horror movies, shopping for new clothes, partying, socializing with friends, and enjoying life, unaware of the terrible fate that awaited them. One night, Isabella and Chloe decided to have an all-night outing. They planned to sneak out and go to a nightclub right after their parents went to bed. Isabella wished her parents good night and went upstairs. Once she thought everyone was asleep, she took out her mobile phone and called her friend Chloe. "Meet me at the store down the street." Chloe agreed and hung up. Isabella quietly opened her bedroom window, trying not to wake anyone. She climbed out onto the windowsill and descended the drain pipe. As she walked along the deserted street, she felt a strange sensation of being watched. Her hair stood on end. She looked back but saw no one. When she reached the store, there was no one around. She took out her mobile phone and called Chloe. "Okay, I'm at the store," she said. "Hurry up, or I'll go back." "Is something wrong?" Chloe asked. "I don't know." Isabella replied. Tonight feels different. Something's not right. I have a bad feeling. You're just imagining things. Chloe laughed. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Wait up. Isabella hung up the phone but couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. 5 minutes later, Chloe appeared, and the two girls walked to the nightclub together. The bouncers never asked them for ID. They went inside and soon started dancing to the music, flirting with the guys on the dance floor. Around 3 a.m., Isabella was chatting with a cute guy who must have been at least 20 when she suddenly felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. It was a message from her ex-boyfriend, Anthony. She hadn't heard from him since they broke up a month ago. The message read, "Come outside. I have a big surprise for you." Feeling curious, Isabella looked around and saw Chloe was busy talking to some other guys, so she didn't say goodbye. Isabella stepped out of the nightclub. She had only walked a few steps when she received another message. "Meet me by the dumpsters around the corner." The street was dimly lit and deserted. Isabella felt uneasy. Something didn't feel right, but she told herself she was being overly cautious. Inside the nightclub, Chloe was looking for her friend. After waiting 15 minutes, she started to lose patience. She glanced around the dance floor but saw no sign of Isabella. She even checked the restrooms; they were empty. At 3:27 a.m., Chloe received a message from Isabella. "Meet me outside now." Chloe stepped outside and received another message. "I'm by the dumpsters. Come find me, love." She followed the directions, walking across the dark and empty street. When she turned into the alley, she was met with a horrifying sight. Her heart almost stopped. Isabella was hanging upside down from a street lamp over the dumpsters. Green and red Christmas lights were wrapped around her ankles, and a large pool of blood was beneath her. Her body had been stripped of clothes, revealing deep wounds across her stomach and chest. Chloe collapsed to the ground, screaming uncontrollably. Several people nearby heard her cries and rushed over. When they turned into the alley and saw Isabella's bloody, hanging corpse, they were horrified. The police were called and interrogated Chloe for hours. Still in a state of shock, she could barely speak or control her emotions. She recounted how she and Isabella had sneaked out that night. She tried to remember all the guys they had flirted with on the dance floor. They asked if she knew anyone who would want to harm Isabella, but she couldn't think of anyone. Despite their efforts, the police couldn't get any useful information from Chloe. During the interrogation, one of the officers pulled out a plastic bag containing a blood-stained envelope. "We found this in Isabella's throat. It's addressed to you," the officer said, handing Chloe the envelope. With trembling hands, she took out the letter and read it. It said, "If you had stayed in bed and gone to sleep as planned, none of this would have happened. Don't sneak out at night. Bad things can happen." The police had to support Chloe before she passed out. She was taken to the hospital and treated for shock. When she returned home the next day, she was still very shaken. Her parents told her that Anthony, Isabella's ex-boyfriend, had been arrested for the murder but was released after passing a lie detector test. He claimed his phone had been stolen on the day of the murder. The police did not rule him out as a suspect, but had no evidence to charge him. Despite the investigation, Isabella's killer was never found, and the case went cold. Over time, people began to forget about the incident. 12 years later, Chloe had almost recovered from the traumatic night when her best friend was brutally murdered. One night, she called her boyfriend and arranged to meet him in the park. It was around 2 a.m. She started walking to the park, but felt a strange presence, similar to what Isabella had described on the night she was killed. Chloe tried to ignore it. Her phone beeped. It was a message from her boyfriend. "I'm almost there. Love you." This made her feel a little better. She just had to walk past the store to reach the park. She began to walk but heard something behind her. Immediately, she started to run. Her boyfriend had been waiting in the park for about 15 minutes. At 2:35 a.m., he received a message from Chloe. "Just keep walking straight, and you'll see me." He followed the instructions and moved forward. There, hanging upside down from a tree, was Chloe's mutilated body. Christmas lights were wrapped around her ankles. She was completely naked, covered in blood. He called the police and was interrogated throughout the night. The next day, when he returned home, there was a letter waiting for him. It was stained with blood. Inside it read, "Don't sneak out at night. Bad things can happen." I wish I could tell you that Isabella and Chloe's murders were solved and the killer was found, but to this day, the case remains unsolved. The investigation is ongoing, but there have been no new leads for a long time. Nowadays, few people even remember the murders. We prioritized the cases at the time, but with so little evidence, they were soon forgotten. You might wonder how I know so much about this story. Well, I don't want to go too deep into it, as it's still an open investigation. If you're curious, I was one of the police officers assigned to the case. I was the one who handed Chloe the blood-stained letter. You might also wonder why these murders were never solved. As I always say, don't go out at night, bad things can happen.